This next part will take some time to make a drawing that's very clear, is very important and a little bit tedious. There's certain things that you want to kind of focus on with this. As I mentioned before, it's really good idea, good practice to make good use of the entire drawing, to not leave a lot of space empty. Of course, this often happens if you don't have enough details to fill up a sheet, but generally speaking, it's a good use of space on the paper to try and fill as much as you can and get as much information in there as possible. So for this process, we're going to be kind of working back and forth between the details and this sheet. There's some things that you can do to kind of make things more orderly. I will be turning off some of these detailed datums. I'll be cropping some of the views, and we'll be making some alignments between the details. So the first thing I want to focus on is this section detail over here in the lower right. So this is for section 4. I'm going to go to that view. As you can see, the crop window is quite large here, and I don't need to show this much content. So just from the very beginning here, I'm going to pull these in just so they don't overlap so much the other drawings. And I'll go back to the transverse section drawing. Okay, so we still have a number of things that we can do. For one thing, these datums don't really have any relevance to this particular detail, since we have only like a one-story structure. So I can go and I can begin to pull this in a little bit. So I'll go back to structure 4, and I will pull this detail in maybe just below level 2.5. Okay, and I can click on these column bubbles and pull them in even a little bit more. I want to leave a little bit of space on top for notes and things like that, and if I have other call out bubbles, but generally speaking, I can really kind of condense this one quite a bit, and I can pull this in a little bit more too, and this side as well. All right, let's go back. And so you'll find you have to go kind of back and forth between the sheet and the details until you kind of get things fitting a little bit better. Now, I'm also going to go to the section through structure 1. And one thing I don't need for this section is this datum to appear. So I'm going to hide this element in my view. And this one right here, level number 3, isn't really relevant. So I'll do the same thing. Hide in view elements. I do want the top plate, and I do want level 2 and level 1 and level 0. Now I might rename those at some point, but for the time being, I want to keep those. And I can also pull this down a little bit. Okay, I would suggest that you leave a little bit of space in here at the top of the ridge. And you can also take your section target here and pull that down. And again, we want to roughly center it with between these column bubbles in terms of the height. So the center line of that circle. Okay, now let's go back to sheet. Okay, so this is going to allow us to move this up a little bit. And I'll do the same thing with this view. So this is the section through structure 2. Hide in view. Same thing with this level 3. And again, these datums can remain. This one here is a reference to structure 1, and we will probably need to add another datum for the crawl space to show maybe the top of footing or something as a reference for someone who was to build the project. So this one here, I think that's probably about the same height as I have on my other drawing. For the section target, I can pull that down a little bit. And let's take a look at how those relate to one another. Okay, so I still have my crop window that's showing, and so that's maybe causing some visual clutter too. Eventually that will be turned off. But one thing that I'll start to do, at least with these two sections, I can make use of the datum since it's running across and serving the same reference. I'm going to try to make alignments across the page. So I'll only need to have the ones that are over here on the right. Another thing I can see is that some of the details from the other structures are appearing in the view, and it's causing some confusion. So for this particular section, I don't have a gutter in the fascia. So I can go to my longitudinal section looking north, click on these, and basically you can see like it's showing this much within the view. I don't need to show that. I'm going to pull these in so they're inside the perimeter wall here. Now, sometimes you'll want to include the information in the perimeter wall within a section, but other times it just makes it confusing. You can't really tell what is in the near foreground and what's further back. So I'm going to pull these all in. This one here, it's kind of clipped to the center line, and I want to get a little bit more in that view. So I'm going to pull that one back. Okay, so the section marker is, the full height like I had drawn before, but in the view, I pulled this down, and that's why this kind of cropping window is much shorter. Right now, if I go back to the section sheet, you can see now I'm not seeing some of that detail. So it will help me when I start to add notes and things like that. Now I'm going to create a temporary line that I can use to align some of the things in these two views. So I'll go to annotate detail line, and I'm going to make a line at the top of the kind of the border in the title block, and then I'm going to move it down. I want to give myself maybe half an inch of space. Okay, so now what I can do is click on that view and use my arrow keys to kind of bring it a little higher. I'll do the same with this view. Okay, now really what I want to align, and once I get, like half an inch of space above that, what I really want to do is align my datums. So I'm using the arrow keys, bringing this down. And as you can see, this datum here and this datum here are pretty much in alignment. So that's good. And that will make it easier for me to use information on one drawing to apply to another drawing. Okay, so I can eliminate that one. I might need to make a new one in a little bit, but for now, let's leave that as it is. Now for these notations here for the datums, top plate is fine. Level 1 is fine. Level 2 is fine. Level 0, maybe I want to call that top of slab. I might add a little bit more detail to some of these. Before I make any changes to the specific level names, thing we'll be doing is adding some notes to a series of wall sections. And generally speaking, I like to put the notes on the left side. So we'll create a wall section, let's say right here, and we'll have a series of notes that identify the materials being used in the assembly. I also like to have the datums, these level datums, appearing in that same line of text. So I'm going to go to the longitudinal section looking north. I'm going to click on the datum, one of the datums. Well, this one I'm not using, but just to sort of give you an illustration of how this will change. If you click on, so you got to click there. Okay. So we've got a check mark over here, meaning that it will appear, but not on this side. I'm going to turn these on and I'm going to turn these off. Okay, so I'll just go down the whole list and turn them on one side and turn them off on the other. There's one that's appearing here that I need to turn off and turn on. I think that's all of them. Go back to the sheet. And I think I'll have to reset these for all of the views. Probably would have been better to do this first. So if I go to section 1, repeat the same process. And this is where things, can get a little bit tedious. And I will go through each one of these views and repeat this process. Okay, section 2 is done. Go to section 3. So for some of these, again, I won't be making reference to them. I may create some new ones, but this one here, level 3, I'm going to hide. Oops. Control. I didn't want to hide the category. I want to hide just the element. My top of plate, that refers to the other structures. I'm going to leave 2.5 as that had to do with this particular drawing, and we'll leave level 2, but I do need to flip them so that the reference is on the left. Okay, structure 4. Going back to the sheet. Okay, now everything has been moved over. Okay, so I am going to change some of the text here because I just want to make sure I have enough room and I want to make the corrections to these levels. So if I go to level 0 and I rename it level, and I'm going to put my caps back on. For now, yes, I'm going to change them to all the corresponding views. So let's see, did that change happen? Yes. I'm going to go through all of these, and some of them I will change a second time, but yes. Now, sometimes you want to update the name everywhere, and sometimes you don't. Let's see here. This will require another change. We're not going to call it 2.5 when we get to that, but rename level 3. And some of these will not become references, so you can change them or probably end up leaving them. Level 4. Yes. Okay. Got all those changed. Now I'm going to go to structure number 1. And I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to call it top of subfloor. And a little hyphen there. I am going to say yes for this. Fix this. This should not be a 0, but an O. Okay. And same thing for this level number 1. I'm going to call this one top of subfloor. Now that's opposed to saying top of finished floor. I like to do top of subfloor because that's going to remain consistent. But if I have a wood floor in one room and let's say a marble tile in another, the finished floor height will vary. So it's better to kind of use a datum that's going to be consistent. Now that I have these changed, I feel like it's a little bit tight in here between the text and the building. You can see right here, there's some overlap. So I'm going to click on that datum, and I am going to pull this out. So there's a little bit more breathing room between them. Okay, and for my crop window, let's see how it looks on the sheet. Okay, I might need to make some adjustments for some of the other ones, but what I'm going to start with right now is that way that I created a gap between the top of the column bubbles and these datums. I'm going to do a similar thing vertically. I'm going to draw a vertical line here. I'm going to move it over 1/2 inch. So I have a little bit of space between the view and the title border, and I will move these over a little bit, about right there. Okay, now what I'll also be doing with these is I'm going to move now that line that I created. Even though this is referencing column C and down here is column 7, I still want to kind of bring some consistency to the relationship of the drawings on this page. Well, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and then try to fine tune this a little bit. Bring that a little bit closer to my reference line. And I'll do the same thing with this one. So that they have a similar relationship. And I'll also bring this one back to where I had it, and I will repeat the process for aligning the datums. Yeah, these need to be brought over a little bit more. If I double click in this view, I can move them over without going to the sheet. See if we can't, there we go. If you pull by these circles, you can begin to kind of drag them a little bit better. Okay. That one did not let me do it. I have a little bit of space in here, so I'm going to try to make these a little bit more consistent. Looks like I'm having to do this all the time. There we go. Okay. And now I'm going to go to, right, I'm going to double click outside of that detail. So now I'm in the sheet, and I will go and I'll adjust the crop window to expand the topography to align with this edge right here. Okay, so let's go to section number 1. Save your project. If not in a while, bring this over here. And one thing that I noticed, you can see that the grade is kind of dropping into my structure. I'm going to need to play around with the contours a little bit at some point so I can get the grade to slope away from the building. We'll come back to that at a later time. I'm also going to take these and pull them back to the edge of the crop window. All right, so already things are starting to sort of fit a little bit better on the sheet. If I click on this view, let's go to that view and let's turn off the crop window. The crop region, and go back and get a better sense of how things will actually start to look. I'm going to do a little bit more work on this section right here. Section 2, click on that crop region and drag it over so we have a similar relationship of the datums to the topography. I'll click on this and bring this in. Now for this side, as I mentioned, sometimes you can eliminate information if it's kind of redundant. So by redundant, I mean I have already a datum over here and it's labeled. You don't need to include this one, so long as it's clear that the line is carrying across at the same height. So what I can do is go to that section number 2, or structure number 2 rather, and I can turn it off. Okay, now see, I have the same issue here with the contours. This is going to create a problem with water getting trapped basically in here and migrating its way down the foundation wall and possibly into the structure. So we'll fix that. Okay, if I go to section number 2 and I turn off crop window. Okay, I can see that things are looking pretty good at the moment. We will need to bring these titles up a little bit higher, but we'll work on these 2 sections to get them kind of cleaned up too before we do that. Okay, now I'm going to go to the section number 3. And I'll start to kind of bring it in a little closer. I'm going to bring this column bubble down here. I'm going to bring crop region over to align those level datums. Maybe bring this up just a little bit to bring these levels over to the crop region. Okay, why didn't it bring all of them? Not sure. Okay, let's take a look at the sheet. Going back to section 3, I'm going to turn off the crop window. Okay, and now I'll start working a little bit on structure number 4. As I had done with these column lines, I'm going to try to align them vertically here, go to annotate, create another detail line, bring this down. Take my section view, use the arrow keys to sort of bring them closer. Let's see where. We have to zoom in order to, there we go. And get them pretty close. Okay. Now for this one, in terms of which ones will track across, I'm going to need to keep the level 2 top of subfloor and level 1 top of subfloor. We may need to move this or change this a little bit. Right now, the piers are going down to that level, but we may make some adjustments as we get into more detail with those. So to look for a kind of common place to align something here, you know, we may not have the ability to have an alignment like we have up here because we're kind of working with some different heights in this location. So I'm actually going to move this one up a little bit. And before I kind of finalize that, I think I'll start to get some of these titles in their final locations. So I'm going to create another detail line for this. And I'll use this lower level here. And then I will move these down. We'll try that location and see if that gives us enough room to get everything we need. Now moving the titles, there's a couple of things that you need to do for that. If I want to move this title here, section through structure 1 looking west, I'm going to click on the title or on the view itself. And if I try to move it, it is going to move the whole view, which I don't want to do. Move the text, instead of clicking on the view, you need to click on the title itself and bring it up. Now I'm going to create the same alignment that I have with my datums here. Try to bring those into the same point, about right there. Okay, and you can see that my tail here is dropping below this, which I don't want. So I'm going to go up to structure 1 and bring this up higher. Okay, and maybe bring it down a little bit so it's slightly below the topography. Okay, now to move the end of the tail, or the right end of the detail line, the title line, I'm just going to drag it and try to align it with my crop window here. All right, same thing with this title down here. I'll click on it and use my arrow keys to bring it up. I'll shift it over so the left edge of the bubble, the column, or the detail title number bubble are lines there. And with adjusting this line, you actually click on the view and bring it in. Okay, now I have, a pretty generous amount of space over here on the right, and I could kind of space these out a little bit more. If I was to click on this one and this one at the same time, see if I can hit control. Yeah, I can move them over together so that I've got a kind of a consistent dimension between the details and the border. Okay, so I can erase this detail line, and now what I'm going to do is move this one up just a little bit so I can get my title for this view into the title border area. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to get those alignments going on, make sure that there's a little bit of space between the title border. And that one's looking pretty good. You can see that these column lines are dropping below the title, and I want to correct that. So I'm going to go to structure 3 and bring them up just so they're a little bit below my topography. The last one to clean up is this one right here. So I can bring that up a little higher. I'm going to try to align my crop window, this right here, so the topography kind of runs consistently across there. And then I'm going to start to move things around a little bit more. I'll bring the crop window over so it aligns here. So let's go to structure 4. Click here, bring this over, bring this up. don't remember what was happening over here on the right. I think I can probably bring that crop view in. Yeah, so it's kind of overlapping my title border. I'm going to fix that. So I'm going to click here and drag that. Try to align those two. Pretty good. And I'll click on the title and use my arrow keys to bring that into place. It's good. Remember to drag the tail in. You need to click on the view and then pull this in. Okay, I can eliminate this detail line and this detail line can come out. And I'll go to structure 4 and I'll turn off the cropping window. Some of these settings you can adjust directly from the page, but all right, so basically that is what I will be showing on this sheet, and we may be adding some more content, but basically the organization of the sheet is pretty well set.